All right, let's talk about the Chamath Palihapitiya controversy or the cancellation, I guess, which is kind of funny. Earlier today, I was listening to the Ben Shapiro show. Usually don't really listen to that podcast, but end up needing to waste a bunch of time, so I was listening to it. And heard him talking about the Chamath, which is, I mean, I follow Chamath. I've listened to his investing advice. I've listened to his opinions. I think he's pretty. I mean, I don't his politics. I don't agree with. He's too much of a SJW from my liking. But at the same time, you can respect anybody that's amassed billions of dollars that didn't steal it. That actually, through prudent investing or through business acumen, was able to amass. He still got. I mean, he still got my respect. I respect all businessmen, especially profitable ones. And then so the Ben Shapiro's it's almost like a right wing cancellation in a way, because the left is actually known for canceling people mostly, right? And I guess the right people say the right does it, but I guess in this case, I guess it was a right wing cancellation. They try to. I mean, he was trying to drum up controversy or try to make an issue. He was trying to make this point that, and also like in doing and just doing a little bit of research, I saw that Tucker Carlson also had a little segment about it. Although to his credit, I do believe Tucker Carlson gave him props for Chamath speaking his mind. So just the backstory: Chamath is a billionaire. He's a billionaire capital allocator, an investor. I guess he's probably involved in the. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure he was like angel investor for a lot of startups, like a lot of tech startups. I want to say Facebook, or but I'm not 100% sure on that one. He definitely knows Peter Thiel, and I have a lot of respect for Peter Thiel. He was like one of the early investors in Facebook. Anyway, a billionaire, super rich. He has a podcast. He's really into poker, so he has a podcast called All In. Him and his investor buddies just talk about politics and stuff like that. And for one thing, I think it's the here's the thing. Like, I think it's pretty cool that he has a podcast, and being a rich person, a very prominent person that has like a lot of financial interest, especially. I mean, he's part owner of the Golden State Warriors, like an NBA team. I'm sure he's got all sorts of financial interests, a lot of corporate financial interests that, you know how they are. They're very, very uptight. If just any kind of perception of bad publicity would have them drop you. So that's, I guess, pretty brave on his part just to have a podcast and talk about speaking his mind. Usually, just for this very exact reason, the billionaires or prominent people would not just do podcasts and speak off the cuff. Um, so I think it's a good thing. And do you want everybody to be scripted and rehearsed and robotic like Hillary Clinton? You know what I mean? Like a fake politician? No, I want everybody to be able to speak their mind, have a podcast, even if somebody's really prominent or whatever, and not be afraid to be, not be able to, misspeak and somebody trying to, misconstrued or whatever, make a political point about what you spoke. Um, I, so basically, the whole gist of the thing is, uh, they were talking about actually it's actually worth watching the entire podcast. It's like an hour and 40 minutes. They get into a lot of topics, but it's not they're gonna choose like a one like just a 140 like 20-second clip or whatever. And but I mean, that's not the totality what he was saying. But to boil it down, he basically had a line where he's like, well, I don't care about the Uyghurs on my level of whatever care, or crosses his line of like attention or whatever. He says that's just not on there, okay? And his co-host is pushing back on him about human rights, this and that, and So yeah, and Ben Shapiro's point was, aha, you see this hypocritical liberal, just like LeBron James. LeBron James, like criticizes the United States, talks about cops and genocide here and systemic racism. But when it comes to genocide and this and that, he's willing to turn a blind eye because he's selling Nike shoes in China. China's a big NBA market. So, he's a hypocrite on that. I'm not an expert on LeBron James. I don't really follow him at all. But in essence, um, in essence, it's not. It was one of those things where he was just being honest, and why everybody should be honest. Why? I mean, like everybody should be able to speak their mind. I don't think it's a such a cancelable event just to saying that he doesn't care about like a certain genocide or civil, like civil rights abuse or whatever in some other countries. I mean, I think I really know what he was getting at. I mean, being a lefty progressive, he was probably coming from the anti-war stance. So a lot of this concern trolling or concerned about other countries, like human rights abuses and stuff like that, are just it's politically convenient because I think in the podcast they go into, but just off the top of my head, I could think of like tons of human rights abuses around the world. Um, there's legit slavery and in Libya. There's in Yemen, Yemenis children are being starved by the United States ally Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of stuff that you can possibly like speak out about or care or whatever. And he's just being honest, like, well, he feels like he can't do anything about it, so he doesn't just, oh, I'm sorry, I don't care about that one. I'm going to focus on global warming, and I'm going to focus on systemic racism in the United States or whatever. And then I'm sure that ruffles the feathers of people on the right, which is, I mean, you know what I mean? You're kind of doing whataboutism. It's like, oh, well, yeah, United States has some flaws, but is it as bad as a genocide or people being interned in forced sterilization? Or I'm not an expert. I don't claim to know everything that's going on in China or whatever with the Uyghur situation, but clearly something is going on. And basically, he was just like, well, I think he was just trying to be bold. He was just trying to be crass. He was just trying to make a point that he was being honest, and other Americans are not honest. He's honest in saying like, well, I don't care about this atrocity because at the end of the day, you don't care about the hundreds of other atrocities going around the world. You care about your local issue. And he's like, well, I'm in the United States, so it's my responsibility to fix the United States. Is that a cancelable event? I don't think so. I think if that's the way he feels, that's the way he feels. I don't see. Would you rather him be like a fake politician and be like, well, just never broach a topic like that, or just give lip service like, oh yes, we care about everything, yes, oh yes, 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 but at the same time, Ben Shapiro wanted to point it out, like wanted to make a point, like, oh, um, at the end of the day, this guy just wants to be just like a fake justice warrior. He's a billionaire. He just wants to be invited to the lefty cocktail parties. But at the end of the day, he doesn't care about systemic racism. He doesn't care about global warming like he said he does. And I think that's a mistake. I think Chamath actually does care about that stuff. I mean, personally, I think it's probably maybe not my priorities, or like not. I think some things are more like some things are more important than that, or whatever, or I don't think United States is that bad with systemic racism, or climate change is not such a dire thing or whatever. But he actually believes that, because you can tell, like, actions speak louder than the words. And if you look at his investing funds, a lot of them, or I think he only invests money that companies that have solution to climate change. Yeah, so I think you can look it up. I mean, it's a mistake. He was trying to make a point. Well, how can you equate, let's say, their problems? Let's say let's take his premise, and he say like there's systemic, or there's it's an abomination what's going on in the United States public schools, and there's abomination what's happening to the black population in prisons here in the United States. um, how do you calculate the difference between, well, that's a bad, these two things are bad, and the Uyghur thing is bad, so how can you place a numerical value, and what do you prioritize, right? How can you say one thing is worse than the other? And I'm sure that that would rub a lot of people the wrong way, um, because clearly, like his co-host was trying to say this, like, well, it's clearly obvious that those Uyghurs, with all the problems in the United States, those Uyghurs are much, what I mean, would love to get out of those internment camps and face the problems here in the United States, because the problem here in the United States are really quite mild compared to what they're going through. And I think he does have a point. Um, but it's also the thing too with the right wing. It's They only care about the Uyghur situation because they want to get tough on China. Um, they want to drum up tensions. They want conflict, and this is a hot button topic that they could push on. Um, which is I think it's in reality it's a bullshit thing, because they could care about starving children in Yemen, but it's the United States ally that's doing the bombing and the starving. So I guess they're kind of mum on that. There's a bunch of other atrocities I don't care about. So this whole atrocity porn. I mean, is China bad? I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's shitty. I'm sure what they're doing is awful. Does international pressure? I mean, probably international pressure does work, um, and it probably putting pressure on China of like boycotting their companies, stop doing business, putting sanctions on them or whatever. Yeah, I think that would move the needle. Um, equating equating to what China's doing to, as to the United States, the systemic racism or the poor education. I think that's definitely a stretch. um, but yeah, I think the whole thing, the right wing, um, emphasizing the Uyghur situation is just because of the tensions. Um, I think Chamath picks up on that, but he probably wasn't so elegant. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? He says a whole bunch of things in his podcast, but they're all gonna like just play that 20 seconds clip, and to try to make him out to be see that this guy has no principles. Look, he doesn't care about this genocide yet, but he claims to be cares about global warming and systemic racism. This guy, at the end of the day, he just like a greedy capitalist or whatever. And I think that type of sentiment. I mean, that type of shallow thinking should be avoided. Um, I don't agree with Chamath on a lot of stuff, but hey, the dude has his priorities, right? Am I who am I to say what type of problems on this world he should, you know what I mean? He has a lot as a billionaire and then capital allocator. He has um he has influenced the world a million times, a billion times more than what I have in other people. So hey, but props on him for like just speaking his mind. Even though I completely don't agree with his politics, and unfortunately, this type fake outrage was going to cause so many more other people in position of prominence to clam up, not to really go on podcasts, speak their mind because of fear for this very exact same thing. I if the just because the left does it, try to just listen to any, like, no matter how many good things you said, no matter how good your intentions are, they'll listen to just the podcast and just try to take a 10-second a clip out of context and play it, and then try to like get you fired from your job, and like trying to get you canceled and get you suspended off of Twitter or social media. Like, that's what the left does. Okay, so just because they do it doesn't mean the right should be above that. If you say you're anti-cancel culture, well, quit trying to cancel other people for quit trying to make fake controversies.